Okay, hello and welcome. My name is Alex O'Sullivan. I'm an 11th grader at Basis DC Public Charter High School.
And my name is Shayla Dell. I'm an 11th grade student at Duke Ellington School of the Arts.
We're both student representatives on the DC State Board of Education, and today we put together a student-led discussion on behalf of the State Board of Education's Student Advisory Committee about distance learning and how it can be improved down the road in the 2020-2021 school year.
We will be receiving testimony from 10 high school students in the district from 7 different schools. These high school students are members of the State Board's Student Advisory Committee, a group of students that meets monthly, and today they will speak on issues ranging from student mental health to work overload to balancing synchronous and asynchronous classes.
This town hall is a webinar, so you all cannot unmute yourselves or turn your cameras on, but we do want you all to be actively engaged in the chat and ask questions throughout to our panelists via the chat. We would also encourage all of the students attending who are not panelists to voice their opinions in the chat at any time as well.
After all of our students finish their 3-minute testimony, we will open the Zoom for public comment and question. You can ask to unmute so that you will all be able to ask questions to each panelist, or if you are a student, you can offer your own perspective on how distance learning is going. But again, you can also comment and ask questions in the chat at any time of the discussion if you would prefer.
So we have about 4 blocks of student testimony. There are 10 students here, so you will see 2 to 3 panelists speak at every section. Shayla and I will ask questions after each couple of students speak, and you guys are more than welcome to put questions or comments in the chat, and the students, all of them, will be able to answer those questions. We have split them up on the basis of about 4 or so main issues, the first being mental health and work overload. And from that, we will hear from Winston Wardlaw, 12th grader at DC International School, Camille Jones, a 12th grader at Capital City, and Giulio Iacoviello, a 12th grader at School Without Walls High School. So Winston, you can go ahead.
Thank you. In my experience, the amount of time I spend in front of a screen has significantly increased since before COVID, with my school day beginning at 8:30 a.m. and ending around 3:30 a.m. with a 1-hour lunch break. But I'm usually still doing work in front of a screen during lunch, and any after-school activities, tutoring, clubs, or extracurricular activities are generally on Zoom, and they last for a few hours after the school day ends. And additionally, since I'm a senior, I've been balancing all of this with college applications, scholarship applications, college workshops, and college visits, which are all virtual. And because everything is virtual, I have been able to access and attend more events than I would have been able to if they were all in person. But the negative effect is that I'm sitting in front of a computer screen for a majority of my day. Thankfully, my house has really strong Wi-Fi, so I'm able to access all of these events and whatnot to be successful in school and outside of school. But the screen time can really take a toll on my overall energy level. So I have to consciously make efforts to go outside, practice my sport, and stay active to like counterbalance all of this screen time. Thank you.
Thank you, Winston. And now we will hear from Camille.
I wrote a speech, so I'm gonna just go ahead and read it. Hi, my name is Camille Jones, and I'm a senior at Capital City Public Charter School. One serious issue that me and my peers face during this new normal we call distance learning is work overload. At Capital City, we spend 10:30 to 3:30 Monday through Friday on Zoom calls, without any asynchronous days or many breaks during our 90-minute class periods. After the 5 hours of screen time we spend on Zoom during the school day, we have to turn around and spend additional time completing homework on our computers. This excessive screen time alone has resulted in me having painful headaches that stop me in my tracks and prohibit me from further completing any assignments. Due to headaches, the overwhelming amount of work, college applications, and home obligations, I often find myself losing motivation as the assignments build up because I don't really have time to be a teenager. I stay isolated in my room all day just trying to submit assignments before the 11:59 deadline. I don't have time to go outside, socialize with the family I live with, and sometimes I can't even find time in the day to have a real meal. I also tend to lose motivation as someone who is spending their senior year in their house and missing out on all the perks of 12th grade I waited so long for. After speaking with some of my peers at Capital City, we can all agree that one of our biggest issues as a collective is lack of sympathy from our teachers. We are giving an overwhelming amount of assignments that can make it difficult for someone to catch up after falling behind, especially when some teachers don't even accept late assignments, which I find slightly unreasonable, seeing as though we are in a completely new learning environment that not everyone is thriving in. My classmates and I are also often ridiculed for not having our cameras on. Personally, I'm not always comfortable with having my camera on, as I often stay up late completing assignments and try to sleep in as much as possible so I'm refreshed and ready for class. Therefore, I don't often have time to get camera ready in the morning. Going forward with distance learning, I think it is vital for our success as students, for our teachers to find ways to keep us engaged. We often keep our cameras off, don't participate, and sometimes fall behind our work because we are bored and lack the motivation we normally receive from our teachers when we are in the school building. I want teachers to know that we are severely overwhelmed. Every time my phone rings is a notification from Canvas saying that a new assignment has been uploaded. I spend my weekends or holidays anxiously thinking about the assignments that are waiting for me, instead of relaxing, completing college applications, and doing anything else a 17-year-old girl might be doing in her free time. When I speak for the students, I can confidently say that we are trying our best. We're just struggling to cope with everything outside of school that has severely impacted the way we compose ourselves. So please be patient and lenient with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. And now we will go to Giulio to close us out on this first topic.
Hello, my name is Giulio. I am a senior at School Without Walls. I also have a prepared testimony of sorts, but I'll go along the way. So I would like to thank the State Board of Education for the opportunity to testify on behalf of my fellow students on student mental health, especially as it pertains to the individual level impact inflicted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Mental health issues for students have been testified before learning is now online. Students are unable to interact with teachers, staff, and their fellow peers. For many students, school is their safeguard, an environment where they feel safe, have access to critical resources, and a direct student network. At School Without Walls, the existing student network has been helping students. In response to student requests, our senior counselor organized a students' survival skills for success for a group of Wall seniors, which is a pilot program that teaches a group of seniors organizational skills, time management strategies, and how to manage stress. It has helped me immensely in dealing with stress and time organizational planning. Our counselors and teachers organize office hours every Wednesday for students in need of academic assistance and academic support. And I would also like to add that something that I don't have prepared in my official testimony, we also have senior project, which is something that all Wall students are required to complete. And I will admit, last year, the seniors did not complete the ending part of the project in response to the COVID-19. And this year, there was a group of students who it was quite overwhelming because we had to deal with online distance learning and, increasingly high demands. So I would say that the administration, so there was a group of students who went to the administration and asked for, extensions, a reform. And in response to that, the administration has been considerably responsive, not as much as we had hoped, but they organized office hours, senior office hours every Wednesday. They established the survival skills for success, partly in response to that. But I would say that for the most part, they've been quite communicative. But in the future, I think that it is vital, especially as a student, that all teachers, because teachers are quite responsive, I will admit, but I think it's vital that all teachers are required to teach by Canvas. I have some teachers who email us assignments, who don't organize office hours. And I think it is vital that in the future, these teachers, switch to Canvas as well. And I think that extending to the broader, I think it's vital that, outside of walls whenever a student needs support, whether it's I guess their teacher, the administration, or even a mental health counselor. I think it's vital that the schools provide the necessary resources to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Giulio. And now we'll move to questions. There was a question that came during the Q&A. And the question is, do you think that it's more common for seniors to have a longer and more complex distance learning school day? So I guess Winston or Camille, do you guys want to answer that one?
I can go ahead, I guess. Well, I can't really speak on anybody else's experience outside of my grade, but I know for me, it's been really stressful trying to like manage all my classes along with college applications because there's like serious deadlines that you have to meet. And it's just a really like long process. So I think it is a little harder. It's more stressful because it's more writing on us right now.
Winston, go ahead.
I think that right now there's definitely for seniors a harder distance learning environment, and maybe in the spring it'll be easier because we'll be done with majority of our schoolwork, I would think. But I attend a IB school, so we have reflective projects, we have IAs, so pretty much every single class we have a major project that we have to do, and we have that on top of our classwork and everything. So we have projects from other classes, normal classwork. We're studying for tests for those classes. So it's just a lot of work right now. But as we begin to turn in those projects and finish the work, I'm sure that it will be easier, but it's likely that juniors, when if they are still doing distance learning, it'll be the same system or cycle where they have a huge rush or push to get all this work done all at once, and then it kind of dies down after. But for right now, I do have a lot of work and might be more than other grades.
Thank you, Winston and Camille. Another question we would have for the three of you would be, within this discussion and even beyond it, there appears to be a general sense of detriment to student and even teacher mental health in regards to distance learning. Could you speak on how this has affected your retention of information and quality of work? And any three of you can go ahead.
I can go. I mean, I feel like it varies from class to class, but overall, I feel like, earlier on, this issue was quite prominent, but I feel like in response to, student, it's not complaints, but feedback, teachers have been, I don't know, slightly dialing down the amount of work, extending deadlines. And I think something that's really helped is this, I mean, technically you have to turn in assignments by the deadline, but if you turn it in after, I think that, I mean, you have to turn it in by the deadline, but even afterwards, they can't technically take points off. And I think that's been really helpful because, at least at Walls, and I think that there's been, a certain level of, consideration by teachers in response to that.
Okay, and I see a question in the chat. And any one of the panelists, even if you haven't spoken, can answer this one. What's the most impactful thing your teachers have done to support your mental health? For anyone who wants to answer this, you can just raise your hand and we'll call on you. Camille, go ahead.
For me, one of my teachers, my anatomy teacher, she saw that we were really stressed as seniors with like the really like big workload. So she kind of gave us a weekend with no homework, which was like really helpful because it was like, wasn't another assignment that I had to like think about and spend my free time doing.
Julia?
I think that, I think as a student, as I previously said, I think it's office hours, responding to feedback, taking our concerns into consideration. But I feel like, more can be done. And I think that, I mean, this is the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, there will always be things that can be done better, but I feel like in overall, teachers have been quite responsive and we've been able to adapt. And it's one more, I mean, in terms of the office hours, in the survival skills for success, one thing that, is really been emphasized is the idea of organization and the idea of, never procrastinating, managing your time well, which to a certain degree has been helpful, but yeah.
Okay, and Luke, I saw you raise your hand, then we'll go to you, Londyn.
Yeah, no, I think that my teachers I go to Basis have been pretty great about adjusting for the most part to the virtual learning space. And they have been extremely understanding and accommodating of most of the students' needs. The problems, they are very willing to listen to the problems that we have with, even if it's with the administration, doing like things like changing up our schedules. The teachers are willing to listen to us and they're understanding about late work and things like that. Particularly our school's grading system is divided up into trimesters. And in the first trimester, near the end, I had multiple teachers reach out to me saying, you're missing this one assignment or you're missing this one assignment, allowing me to bring my grade up from what might have been like a B+ to an A- or an A- to an A. And that small thing is like, it's something to them could be easily forgotten, but they've done a really good job of remembering to do that. And it means a lot to us as students to have that communication. And because these grades, especially, in 10th, 11th and 12th grade, these grades are essential to applying to schools and getting our, GPAs to a degree where schools will accept us. So
Thank you, Luke. Londyn, you can go next.
So a few of the panelists can also agree. In student government, my teacher has made what is called home base, which is an area for the students to be able to log into Teams on Wednesday afternoon and talk to other students in different grades just about how they feel about what's going on, like with school or any issues that they have with virtual learning or any questions that they may have to the upperclassmen if it's their first or second year in high school. Personally, I think that is really helpful because it's a space for students to interact with other students without it being graded, class-based, or like a learning area. So it's just a free space for the students to be able to talk and discuss, and they feel like they have like someone to talk to or someone that's there that can help them or guide them throughout the challenging times that we're going through right now.
Thank you all for your responses. I think that as well, I know myself as a student, I can definitely relate. And I'm sure if there are any other students watching or all the other panelists, they can relate as well. Another question we had was, are there any aspects of distance learning that have allowed improvement on your mental health? And if so, could you please elaborate? And any of you guys could answer that. Go ahead and raise your hand. I can call on you. Okay, Reagan, go ahead.
I just have a very brief spiel to say upon this matter. A lot of it is a matter of convenience and accessibility. I don't live very close to the school I attend, so a lot of that time, a lot of the hours of my day was spent commuting to and from school. So the fact that there is more time in my day to finish my work greatly reduces stress.
Okay. Luke, go ahead.
So in a lot of ways, being at home has actually allowed for self-improvement for me, partly outside of school and partly in school. It's become a lot easier to message teachers through the Teams app that we use and communicate with them directly. And I think it's led to me becoming more responsible because I feel like I have a more direct line to those people. And then also outside of school, just being able to be home for my lunch period has allowed me to pursue one of the things that I've always been interested in but never had the time to pick up, which is cooking. And I am still horrible at it, but it's definitely a work in progress that I'm beginning to enjoy more and get better at. And I wouldn't be able to do that if this wasn't happening.
Thanks, Luke. There are a couple questions you want to get to. I see your hand, Giulio. So the first one is, how do you feel about students being required to have cameras on? Camille, you already said something about this earlier. The question's like, does it make you feel accountable for being part of a class? Does it help with engagement? Gary, go ahead.
When it comes to this, I've actually had a talk with a teacher about how that help attendance. And so when it to that, teachers do believe that that can help students be more engaging. It's more like they have more of a requirement to be there and more of a requirement to have more participation in that class. And so I believe a camera mandate would not only help attendance, but would also help participation and help student engagement and other students' engagement who don't usually participate in school physically. So I believe a camera mandate is something that could be helpful for teachers and the students.
Okay, Giulio, go ahead.
I partially agree with that. I think that I have a teacher who I guess takes points, who does participation points based on camera, but you also have to be aware of, in individualized, circumstances. I also have a teacher who says she starts off every class by saying, I would love to see your beautiful faces if you're willing, incentivizing of sorts, but I don't think a requirement in the end, I guess it does do a lot. It does incentivize. A strong encouragement I would definitely be in support of, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I see there are a lot of questions coming to chat. I'm actually going to get to one more. So this one is from the president, the president of the state board, Ruth Wattenberg, asked, do you guys have the ability to safely see any friends in person? Does a school provide any opportunities? Does this allow for you guys to sort of take away from some of that stress that may be built up? Alyssa, go ahead.
My school, Duke Ellington School of the Arts, I know I think Wednesday they had like a drive-through parade. But the thing about those parades, so I guess those parades are sort of like opportunities for us to be able to see each other, but in cars and stuff. But a lot of them are during the day. And so I know my mom goes to work every day. She has ever since the pandemic. She has to go to work every day. So things that happen during work hours, like 9 to 5, I can't make. And also sometimes it's short notice. So that was I think they've had a parade about twice, once during Spirit Week and once around Thanksgiving, and that's been the only things. But it's low. It's not a lot of engagement or participation. Other than that, no, there really aren't any opportunities for us to see our friends safely. And any of the seeing my school friends or anything, I have to do myself. Or yeah. And it relieving stress. I try to be able to spend time with my friends and enjoy myself, but I just can't help but think about how I could be spending the same time doing work. So I don't know. That's a me thing, but it's just it doesn't relieve stress seeing your friends. You need to socialize, and it makes you happy to be around people that you love. But as far as it relieving stress, no, it may make it more stressful.
Okay. Anyone else for that question? Reagan?
I think that Alyssa summarized it very well. Sometimes schools do offer those abilities, but it's not always accessible to everyone. Personally, at my school, Woodrow Wilson High School, that has not been an option made by the school. Sometimes there are third-party organizations, clubs such as Best Buddies, that allow for very safe, very limited groups to kind of go out on walks together. And I think that especially for members of Best Buddies, it's that kind of social interaction is incredibly important. So I think there always has to be, we always have to take a look at how school mandated events can be seen on a safety metric.
Okay, cool. Well, there are a lot of questions in the Q&A chat for all the panelists. You can type out answers to them if you want. We do have to move on to our next topic. Feel free to stay active in the chat. There are questions rolling in. But now we will hear from our next block of panelists. Shayla, do you want to introduce them?
Sure. One moment, sorry. Our next topic is about the online learning platforms like Microsoft Teams and Google Classroom and how these platforms are used in virtual learning and technology trouble students are running into. We'll hear from Reagan Allvin, an 11th grade student at Wilson High School, and Alyssa Richardson, an 11th grade student at Duke Ellington School of the Arts High School. Reagan Allvin, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Reagan Allvin, and today I would like to discuss the qualms relating to the overload of different online learning platforms and how that affects the process of education at large. At the moment, especially earlier in the pandemic, teachers were using all sorts of platforms such as Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, Canvas, Aspen. Sometimes they'd use their Google Mail, and it often led to much confusion and a fuss between classes. In my personal experience, in the spring of last year, there was an extreme disconnect among teachers and the accessibility for grading became extremely questionable. I remember being incredibly overwhelmed, having to memorize all of the different nuances of Teams and Canvas and how do I turn this and etc. There became a greater focus on technicality as opposed to content, and this system can be incredibly dangerous, especially for younger education. Younger students, especially those in elementary school and kindergarten, they're still developing neurologically, and therefore a lot more patience is needed for that. And that kind of confusion provided by multiple online learning platforms does not allow that kind of patience. In addition, on a much more nuanced scale, we have to consider communication and accessibility. Not every family has the same access to information regarding school events and school activities as other families do. So therefore, by throwing too many variables into the mix, there is a greater risk of lower income students and out of boundary students being at a disadvantage. What we need, especially at this time in which there is a lot out of our control, we must find a way to unify. And a way to unify that DC education administrators can do is to find one or two platforms and stick to it. As a group, students and educators alike need common ground. And then from there, we can move forward, and then we can move on to more intricate issues. Fortunately, my school, Wilson High School, has adapted mostly, if not completely, to one or two platforms, Microsoft Teams and Canvas. Microsoft Teams allows for both storage of files and a meeting platform. And Canvas allows also for the distribution of files and being able to turn in said files. And I can say greatly with a lot of confidence that my sense of order and well-being has greatly improved ever since we found a way to found a means of uniformity among these classes. I greatly hope that policy and action can be taken to improve uniformity among these distance learning platforms. So then from there, we can kind of grip the wheel of this vehicle that we often thought was quite out of our control. Thank you.
Thank you. Alyssa, you can close out on the topic.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Alyssa Richardson and I'm an 11th grader at Duke Ellington School of the Arts, and I'm going to be touching on like power outages and like internet inconsistency. So as we all know, technology is not always on our side. While we are extremely grateful for technology and how it has aided us in this adjustment to learning at home, it does have its moments, and those moments can make it extremely difficult to keep up with our classes. Wi-Fi and internet connections can be really tricky, especially when we're dealing with inclement weather. I think like Tuesday or Monday, it was raining really badly, and I've been amongst my peers, we all be talking about how we were having Wi-Fi issues. So I've noticed that it's a pattern. Anytime it's raining really heavily, there's a lot of times like issues with Wi-Fi. Sometimes an entire area in DC will have a power outage or like internet outage that lasts hours. I know it happened to me like 2 weeks ago. My entire block just like the power went out, and so I missed class, and I have 10 classes, so missing a day is like missing a week. And during those hours that we're spending trying to restore our Wi-Fi and our internet, school doesn't stop. It keeps going. And because we aren't getting instruction directly from our teachers as frequently as we used to when we were in person, when we saw our teachers 2 to 3 times a week, we're now seeing them like twice a week for like 45 minutes. Missing just one class can equate to like a week's worth of information. And even when there isn't like an entire outage or like your Wi-Fi didn't go out, dealing with shaky internet in general while in class can be really frustrating and even sometimes embarrassing. There are times when students are taking important notes during class and then the video call will freeze and you're left with the dreadful task of either having to fill in the blanks yourself, you have to hunt down your teachers to get the information, or you have to ask a friend. And it just, even while it can be done, it isn't ideal. And dealing with that throughout the day can be very frustrating. Students also experience those times when they're in a call and they're called on to either like report something or just respond, just trying to get engagement within the classroom. And when they're speaking, their internet glitches and they like stops talking, and nobody wants to go through that. It's just, yeah. And no one is immune to these technology issues, no matter how expensive or efficient their internet is. I ask my mom all the time, I'm like, is there any way we can upgrade our Wi-Fi? Like, is there anything we can do? She's like, this is the most expensive Wi-Fi that we can have. So even I have internet issues all the time. It's not even like it doesn't have to do with like your means or even like your income. You could be paying $1,000 a month for Wi-Fi, but technology is going to be inconsistent. And so when students are experiencing these issues, it can be hard to notify their teachers. Most teachers are not actively checking their emails as they teach. And for a lot of students, email is the only way to communicate with the teachers. Like when my power went out and I was trying to email my teacher, of course she's teaching, so she didn't see it. And so when stuff like that happens, it's hard to take the steps that need to be taken in order to accommodate those students and make sure that they get everything they need. Like whether those steps are recording the class or emailing a link or sharing notes or just setting aside work. Sometimes they're not taken, and it's not because teachers are trying to be malicious or intentionally withholding information from their students. It's just when they're not informed of what's going on or what the circumstances are because the information didn't get to them quick enough, it just puts everybody at a disadvantage. And yeah, it's never like nobody ever wants it to happen. And I think maybe we can find a more instant and less formal way to communicate with teachers when we're dealing with things like that, because of course email may be a little bit more formal, and I know some teachers do use Remind, but I don't know, just sometimes when we deal with those technology glitches, it can be really hard to let our teachers know, and so we're all left behind and trying to catch up, and by the time you make it to the next class, that's like a whole nother week worth of information. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. And thank you, all of our panelists so far who have spoken. Now, for the audience members, we encourage you to put questions in the Q&A box or in the chat. One has just come in. Do you guys have a regular schedule if you were at school in person? Do you think that all schools, public and charter, should be on the same class schedule? Should classes be shorter to allow less screen time, give you guys an opportunity to explore different ways to deal with mental health? Any one of you guys can answer any one of those questions. Would anyone like to go ahead? Luke.
All right, thank you. So I think I'll try to answer all of them, but I'm sure everybody will have more to say about every single one of them because these are very open-ended and good questions, I think. So we have a regular schedule at my school. We still go by the same schedule. It's just that we have, and I'll get into this later when I'm talking, when I'm talking about my specific topic, but we have the same schedule no matter what. It's just classes. And then all schools, public and charter, I don't think they should be on the same class schedule. We're all taking different classes, even person to person, not just school to school. So it's not all students are going to be taking the same difficult classes that I am while also taking some of the easier classes that I'm taking, right? Or something like that. And that's just like, to have the same schedule would sort of constrict that kind of thing where some students may need more time because they're taking a harder class and then less time in another class because they don't need it. So just as a concept, I don't think I agree with that. I don't even think all schools public should be on the same class schedule. And then should classes be shorter less time? I think it's definitely an opportunity, but I typed this up at one point. It might be an unavoidable reality of distance learning that we are just going to have to spend a lot of time in front of screens. It's just there might be some ways to limit it, but depending on the class, that can be a bad thing for the class. So.
Okay, and Camille, go ahead.
So personally, I go to a public charter school. We have a regular schedule, but it's just kind of modified for distance learning. We have 90-minute classes instead of 60 minutes. I don't think that we should all have the same school schedule or class schedule, but I do think that charter schools should kind of follow in the asynchronous days that I think DCPS gets. I think that would really be beneficial for my stress levels. And I think classes should be shorter because I know like during 90 minutes, we have like 2 90-minute classes back to back with only a 5-minute break in between. And I get really overwhelmed and I kind of like stop paying attention because it's just too much and it's really draining for me. So yeah.
Thank you. We'll go from Zion to Reagan.
My bad. I was just trying to like highlight that the question was about to be answered, like was being answered.
Okay, got you. Reagan, do you want to go ahead?
Sure thing. For that last part of the question regarding having more time away from the screens, as DCPS has, as you may know, incorporated a Wednesdays to be asynchronous, which means work is still being done, but you won't have to be looking at a screen in a meeting like for 7 hours a day, and that I think that has fared very well because the same amount of work is still being done, but the drawbacks of looking at a screen for the better half of your day is diminished significantly. And in addition, classes throughout the school week, there are both synchronous periods and asynchronous periods. So for one half of the class, most classes will have will be held on Microsoft Teams. And for the rest of that class period, the work will be done asynchronously. And that's a much more condensed benefit as the Wednesdays being off in the middle of the week.
Okay, thanks, Reagan. And we're going to get to that topic, synchronous versus asynchronous classes, shortly after we get these questions, and Gary, and then Alyssa.
I wanted to talk about how the schedules are. I attend Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School, and the way that my schedule is I'm hearing students say that they're in 90-minute classes and they having 7 classes a day. I have 4 classes a day, and the first half of the period is 35 to 45 minutes long, and the second half of the period is what they label as independent study work time, where you do your work. So we're not always sitting in front of a live screen or listening to something. Sometimes it's hard for teachers to grab that attention of a student. So teachers are also trying to be creative with the time that they have. So I hear a lot of stress is going on with students in different schools. And with the way that my schooling is set up, with Wednesdays we have off, and then we have 45 minutes to complete work after that class, and then still get to 11:59 that night to finish that work. I believe that if students are stressed out in other schooling environments where they are overworked and then sitting in front of a screen for long periods of time, I believe they need to adopt that form where they are having these many classes for this amount of time and then given this time to release the school workload off of them.
Thank you, Gary. Alyssa?
Okay, so as far as the all DCPS schools having the same schedule, I don't know if that would work because like some schools have 4 classes, some schools have 7. My school has 10 classes, so I don't know how I don't know, like we wouldn't be able to have the same schedule. And yes, we are a DCPS school, but and we do have the same structure with the Wednesday off and the asynchronous and synchronous time with the 45 minutes synchronous and then the 35 asynchronous. We do have that, but a lot of teachers just take it into their own hands to take the rules and bend them. So if they want to follow the rules and give us that asynchronous time, they will, and if they don't, they won't. So while it's written down and it's supposed to happen, what's supposed to happen though always happen. And I don't know. Sometimes when it comes to how long we're looking at the camera, it's not so much about the asynchronous versus synchronous time. It's a lot about the workload, because I think that if we had less synchronous time, teachers would take that as an opportunity to assign more work. So while we do have that asynchronous time, that's not stopping the fact that I'm looking at my computer because I have 3 essays due at 11:59. Like it doesn't change that. So while lessening the time for asynchronous will allow us more time to do our work, if the work is increased, then the amount of time that we're staring at the computer is still the same.
Thank you, Alyssa. I have one personal question about the learning platforms. Do you guys think it would benefit you if all of your work and all of your assignments and all of your live classes were on one platform instead of having to go from platform to platform? If anyone wants to raise their hand and speak, go ahead. I'll go to Winston first.
Okay. So at DC International School I attend, all of the work that we get, majority, like 99% of all the work we get is through Google Classroom. And all of our virtual classes are on Zoom. And I don't know how it is for other schools, but I feel like that has really simplified where we get our work and how we log into classes. So every morning I just have a note like document where I have period 1 and it's a Zoom link, period 2 it's another Zoom link, and so on and so forth. And then if teachers are assigning work, I can just go to Google Classroom and see what the to-do list is and see what every class is, what assignments I have to do for every class. So I think that it would be helpful if that was a reality for every other school.
Thank you. JP?
I attend Wilson, and at least for the 4 classes I have, I'm in hospitality, AP English, AP Physics, and pre-calc. All of those classes, you turn in everything on the same site except for math, which is Canvas. And math is on Delta Math because it's just simply easier to have math problems and examples on that website than it is on Canvas. And having everything on the same website makes it a lot easier to track everything that you've completed and everything that's due at the end of the day. I know for me, I can open the Canvas app and there's a tab that literally says to do, and it has all the assignments that are due at midnight on that day in one section, and you can swipe to the left and press done whenever you finish and turn it in, and it'll be removed from there. And then when the next day comes, it'll switch it to all the stuff that's due that day. It makes it a lot more organized and a lot more efficient.
Thank you, JP. And I see Camille and Luke also share the same sentiments about that. We'll go Gary, Reagan, and then Giulio. Try to make your answers as quick as possible so we can keep going with the event. Gary.
Okay. I'm gonna be brief. Platforms have actually been a problem that I've been having with not all of my teachers, but a few of them. Just to list what we use, OneNote, Canvas, Microsoft Teams. We have teachers trying to be creative. They use different platforms. I'm having to go on Clever and I'm having to use STEM scopes. That's already 5+ platforms. I'm having to go on other different websites for physics class or for art class, and you having to turn things in on it. So when it came to those platforms, I was losing track. And I was like, oh, I'm forgetting this, I'm forgetting that. I'm on OneNote. I'm having 8, 9 different tabs on my computer. And I really feel as though that is unorganized, that if they're going to have us doing assignments for each class, that it should at least be a level of organization instead of having students scatter all over the internet.
Thank you, Gary. Julia?
Yeah, so Walls, the vast majority of teachers use Canvas. I think it's extremely useful because I can just go on the site page and it just shows, AP Environmental Science, this due 8 p.m., 15 points, AP Art History, this due 11 p.m. Thursday, this time. It's extremely helpful. And I think that when you start using a more than one platform, it starts getting discombobulated and it starts making me lose track. Hopefully, generally, I haven't really had that issue. I've had it with some teachers, but I mean, in general, using Canvas and using Aspen to check grades, using Microsoft Teams for video, I think having a singularity of outlets for learning is extremely important. And last year, I mean, it was kind of an issue. I had some teachers using Zoom, some teachers using Google Classroom to assign work. I had one teacher using Microsoft Teams. So I think there's been a much better job at kind of consolidating onto one platform, which I think has been very useful in tracking SAPs.
Thanks, Julia. Reagan?
I think most of the fellow committee members have stated it quite well, so I'll keep my point very brief. I think that 2 or 3 is an ideal number because even though we need to keep it succinct, some platforms have strengths that others do not. Microsoft Teams could be used to turn in work, but it just simply is not convenient. So we need to focus on the net gain we get from each individual platform.
Thanks, Reagan. I know Shayla has one more question, but for all the panelists, please put your comments, send them to all panelists and attendees so that the attendees can see what you're saying as well. But Shayla, you can go ahead and ask yours.
My question is, do you feel as though your teachers are effectively using these platforms? And if not, could you explain or elaborate? And anybody can answer this. I'll go ahead and call on whoever raises their hand. Go ahead, Giulio, and then on to Alyssa.
I would say so. Sometimes the older teachers get a little bit confused, but it is what it is. No, but I think overall, yes. I think that they know what they're doing. If they're having technological issues, they let students know. And I think that it's been extremely helpful and a good change from last year. And I think that there's a connection with the other types of, the fact that we're using 5 or 6 platforms led to, some being confused about some and students being confused too. And I think this year it's become a lot easier, both for teachers and for students.
Thank you. And Alyssa?
So 2 of my teachers actually don't have Canvas access. Like, I think they're waiting on like DCPS emails or something like that because Duke is an art school. So they haven't been able to even work with the software. And then for the others of my teachers, sometimes they get confused because with Canvas, you can assign something as a test, you can assign it as an assignment, you can make it an announcement that shows up on your calendar, but you don't turn things in. And sometimes the teachers get confused and they have things locked up or not available for the right amount of time. And that can make it very hard to keep track of what you're actually supposed to do. Or sometimes they'll assign an assignment and be like, in class, they'll say, oh, you don't have to do that. And then they don't mention the things that you do have to do. So now you're just trying to work through and look at everything that's on the calendar and be like, what was I actually supposed to do? Because there's a whole bunch of stuff on here that you said don't do. And so sometimes it can be really confusing as far as Canvas goes because of the different ways that you can make things assignments and the different modules, because assignments can show up in your modules tab or your assignments tab or your grades tab. And sometimes teachers can misplace what they're trying to do. So yeah.
Thank you. And then I think I saw Gary raise his hand. Did you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I can say that this has been really, when it comes to platforms, I know that teachers, one of my teachers, Ms. Garima, she says that she has the privilege of being young. And so it's easier for her to find platforms that's easy for her students to use. Now, with other teachers who I've been using different platforms with, I have personally sat through their class, went to the work, and have had to have a one-on-one with them on how to put my answer on a document on a different platform. And we're sitting there experimenting how to fold it and make it littler. And I feel like that is very unnecessary. I feel like that is something that should be looked at before you assign the work to a student. And even on Microsoft, something as simple as Microsoft Teams, I don't know if anybody else has struggled with it, but we were having a problem with, we couldn't write on it. We couldn't write on anything that was on Microsoft Teams, and it was becoming a problem. Nobody was being able to get their work in on time, and it was affecting students' grades very badly.
Thank you, Gary. And then Zion.
Yeah, I just wanted to like add on to that. Like, my teachers usually use one platform, but you know, my dad, he's a teacher, and he's usually talking about like how they want to boost engagement, and so they'd use different platforms. And the same thing happened with my teachers. So they started using different platforms like Nearpod. We'd use like Albert, NoRad Inc. and things like that. And most times, like if I had one teacher who was really organized about how he did it. He did things on a regular schedule. But my physics teacher, he's like probably the least organized teacher I have. Like we'll have a Nearpod, like not really assignment, but we'll have class in Nearpod, and then he'll have us go like back and forth between Nearpod and Canvas, and he won't post the Canvas thing until he mentions it. So, you know, people could be focused on Nearpod, but don't realize that they have a Canvas assignment that they have to complete because he hasn't said anything about it. So.
Thank you. Now on to the next topic, which is balancing synchronous and asynchronous classes. We will hear from Londyn Napper, an 11th grader at Woodrow Wilson High School, and Luke Johnson, an 11th grader from Basis, DC. Londyn, we can begin with you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Londyn. I'm an 11th grader at Wilson High School, and this evening I'll be speaking on synchronous versus asynchronous balance in classes. When DC school officials envisioned this type of schedule, I think that they had the right idea. I think that where the problem lies is how it is being implemented. I totally understand that the bind that the teachers are in. They're trying their best to make sure that every minute counts. I can't imagine the pressure and time constraints that they are under trying to cram lessons into small amounts of time. However, it is unfair to the students. For example, in my history class, the entire class period is synchronous based, meaning that we are on the call for the entire duration of the class period, which leaves very little amount of time to complete the asynchronous assignments for this class, which leaves me responsible to complete the assignments that are given for homework and the asynchronous assignments that we should have gotten time to do in class. Not to mention studying for honors and AP classes. With all of these things, there still is life. There are so many studies around how COVID can affect you mentally. So am I expected to complete assignments during my lunch hour and stay involved in extracurricular activities that sometimes take place during the scheduled lunch hour? And how am I supposed to get exercise or fresh air or go on walks that the principals and scientists highly encourage? So yes, how I do think that they had the right idea. I think that where the problem lies is how it is being implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Londyn. Luke, you can go ahead.
All right. So my name is Luke. I'm a junior at Basis DC, and thank you for allowing me to discuss this issue of balancing synchronous and asynchronous classes. Just to clear up some background information in case anybody in this discussion isn't familiar, synchronous learning is when classes occur on fixed time frames. Students and teachers will they'll work at the same time and they'll actively interact with each other. Whereas an asynchronous class will let a student complete their work on their own time, for the most part, at their own pace. Depending on the school or the course that you're doing, there will be a different balance between asynchronous and synchronous classes for students and teachers. I have two the issue of a couple of teachers try to get how they feel about the balance between asynchronous and classes. A very array of opinions between like love it, hate it, but I'll try to speak to the most general opinions. Oh, okay. Told my Wi-Fi isn't great. I'm being told to turn my camera off. We got this. Okay, so there are upsides and downsides to both of these types of classes, according to what most people have told me. In synchronous classes, people, especially students, like that they're interacting with their teachers more directly. However, for teachers, this constricts their time to assist students. In asynchronous classes, they will get more messages from students, but also be able to respond to more messages. And then in asynchronous classes, students can work their schedules to make things more convenient and can still contact teachers to clear things up. However, students I've spoken to, especially outside of my own school, have told me that they struggle with getting timely responses from teachers and in general, just clear communication. I think that that can also be attributed to, as we've spoken to earlier, there is a number of different platforms being used by certain students. So that could also be an issue that exacerbates some of the problems that can be found with asynchronous classes. I've also been told that when effectively utilized, asynchronized classes also have the added benefit of helping students who have tech and Wi-Fi issues. Another aspect that a lot of my classmates have spoken to is struggles with Wi-Fi issues. That has been really well solved, I think, with the asynchronous classes for a lot of students, because they don't have to be keeping up with a teacher while they're, while they're actively teaching. You can message during like a recorded lecture, you can message your teacher, or if you're watching a YouTube video that your teacher has assigned as part of your homework or asynchronous work. At Basis, the students I've spoken to have said mostly positive things about the balance. Multiple students told me that they thought they would appreciate a few more asynchronous classes, especially in their AP courses where they have 4, sometimes 5, but mostly 4 asynchronous classes or synchronous classes a week to 1 asynchronous class. Both the teachers at the school that I spoke to have also said that they don't want to have more synchronous classes. So in that last synchronous class would make it really hard, especially for my language teacher, who my foreign language teacher, who teaches already, spends the class that would be asynchronous for my class teaching another class. So another thing that I've noticed was that colleagues wanted more synchronous sessions in a particular class when they felt less confident about that class. This speaks to the tedious position that schools are put in, where they have to make sure that each student gets the attention necessary for them to keep up with the demanding high school classes and curriculum, but also creating a schedule where a student can have that experience where they get the necessary information. Overall, the balance of the Basis system, I think, has been pretty good for students. I've had a few conversations, as I said, with students outside of Basis. So while I can't speak entirely for the experiences of everybody else, I would say that they have had a few more issues than we have. I would welcome anyone from the audience, Basis or otherwise, who might have opinions about their school's asynchronous to synchronous balance to make that more clear. And then furthermore, this is my last point. I think I might have talked a little over. In my experience, I've found that the most difficult classes to be the ones that I appreciate having the majority of my classes be asynchronous or synchronous. Okay, these words are extremely similar, but synchronous is the thing that I appreciate with the classes that are harder. This is specifically true in my economics class, where it's a very early class. It helps me get up in the morning every day because I have that class as synchronous. And then also more discussion-based classes like my AP Literature and AP United States History class. Those 2 classes are very well aided by having a synchronous class because we can have better discussions. But then I would also like to add that for my asynchronous classes, I really appreciate not having to look at screens as much, a feeling that my colleagues have also spoken to previously. So thank you again for allowing me to speak about this on behalf of me and my classmates. Yeah.
Thank you, Luke. And we're going to continue on with questions. We have a question in the Q&A. It says, have you provided feedback to school administration / teachers on the virtual posture experience? And if so, what was the outcome? I believe this question, oh, okay. Well, go ahead, Londyn.
So this question probably wasn't for my topic, but I can give a scenario. So there are a few teachers that I had from last year. Like, I can tell that things have changed and still are in the process of changing, because during the spring when everything first happened, a lot of the students had like a really low grade in my math class. So like parents were emailing the teachers, students were emailing the teachers, and the teacher's response was that he has children, so he has to watch for his children and try and do the work. And personally, because my mom works for Department of Labor, you can't use your child as an excuse to as a reason as to why you can't complete the job that you signed up for. So that caused like a lot of issues. But now the response that we receive, the teachers are genuinely trying to fix things. And I remember that in the very beginning of this school year, the first thing that the teacher said on the very first day of school was, if there are any issues or any concerns, please email me or contact me as soon as possible. And also, they asked us to give them feedback. They said not to be scared to tell them what they're doing wrong or what can be fixed to help them figure it out, but they actually asked for feedback. So I think that compared to the spring and compared to now, things have actually gotten a little better. I'm not saying they're the best, but things definitely have improved.
Thank you, Londyn. We have another question. We have asynchronous time and synchronous time. How do you feel about the idea that some teachers bend the rules for both times? For example, making synchronous time longer. Do you believe that as a student should bring this to the attention of administrators or others who have the power to help? And anybody can answer this. Go ahead, Alyssa.
Okay, so at Duke Ellington School of the Arts, we have our day divided. So the first half is our academics, and then the second half is our arts block, where I experience most of the like going over the synchronous time and like going into our asynchronous time is mostly in my arts block. So I'm in the vocal department, and when I have brought it to the attention of the admin for that department, they're not very receptive of the information. Like my teacher, my actual vocal teacher is the actual chair of the department. So anything that I say to her is really no going past her. I mean, we have a dean of arts, but after that, there's nothing else you can really do. So I have gone to the chair of the department and tell her like, look, this is stressful. I'm getting headaches. I didn't used to wear glasses before I started this learning from home, and now I do. So that says something. But I told her that, and I mean, it's nothing really that more that I could have done because nobody else is higher above her in that department. So I have brought it to the attention of people, but I just think when the department has set their minds up and the teachers have, and sometimes the admin are on their side, there's not much that can be done.
Thank you, Alyssa. Does anybody else want to speak on that? Okay, Londyn, I'm going to let you go ahead, but additionally, Alex has just put in the chat, can the panelists put in the chat how many synchronous classes a week is appropriate? So if you guys could do that, and Londyn, go ahead.
So I just kind of spoke to this in my statement. So I did say how my history teacher, she uses her whole entire class period as synchronous work hour, but we still have asynchronous work to do for her class on top of her homework that she assigns. So first I'm going to start and say that Wednesdays are supposed to be the days where we can catch up on any late work or to start projects that are due at a later date. However, my teacher, the same history teacher, she takes it upon herself to assign an assignment that morning and makes it due that same night, which to my understanding is not supposed to be happening. Even from the principal's perspective, that is not supposed to be what's happening. So I went to her about it, and she, like Alyssa said earlier, they're not receptive as to that when you come to them about certain things like under that topic. So I think yeah, it really is a challenge, and I just hope that in the near future, teachers can start to realize that keeping us in class the entire hour and then still giving us asynchronous work and homework is a bit of a challenge, especially when you sometimes go over the time that the class is supposed to end, or you just give way too much information and then the assignments are way too much to finish in this short turnaround time.
Thanks, Londyn. I actually have a question for the panelists. I guess this is for DCPS students. Then if you're a charter student as well, how has like the Wednesday off from like synchronous classes and having that day is fully asynchronous, how has that helped you? And if you're a charter student, is that something you would like to see at your school? Would that be a recommendation you would make to any state board members that are on this call? Gary, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
So considering that I do have a workload and that other students do have a workload, having that middle of the week, that Wednesday off, that tomorrow is something that I feel like is good for me. It allows me to be able to be like, look, I didn't get this done today. I wasn't able to get this done for 2 classes, but I know that tomorrow I don't have any classes. If I'm hearing that teachers are assigning students work on Wednesdays, if I get assigned an assignment on a Wednesday, I'm going to email the teacher and be like, hey, I'm not supposed to be getting assignments on Wednesdays. Now we do have an advisory where they want us to come in, have an advisory period for about 30 minutes to an hour, and that's just about it. But that Wednesday for me is good for me to release some of that workload that I do have.
Okay, and Reagan.
Oh, never mind. I haven't. I thought I blanked at first. Thank you for your patience. So I think that the Wednesdays being off in the middle of the week, they very much clear up the brain fog that often is produced during the other halves of the week. Often when it is, because these classes are always online, it feels like you're on your computer from sun up until sundown. It often feels like you're kind of stuck in a loop. And if you don't get something, then it's like too bad you don't get it. However, those Wednesdays do allow a point of clarity to get your brain back up to speed.
Winston and then Camille.
Okay, so at DC International School, we have Fridays off instead of a Wednesday. So that Friday, the whole day, or from about 8 to 4 o'clock, we have office hours with our teachers if we need to meet with our teachers, or with our college counselor. There's like a designated time during that day where we could meet with them. So it's helpful to have a designated day to talk to the teachers. But the one problem that I think occurs with that Friday being the day off is that you're kind of working for the weekend. So you have 4 days of classes and you're like waiting until you can have the Friday off to get to the weekend. So I don't think that's healthy with it being on a Friday. Maybe a Wednesday would be better, but I do think it is helpful to have a day during the school week when students could talk to teachers or resubmit assignment or just do anything school related.
Thanks, Winston. And I see London's put something in the chat about the importance of like the teachers following the rules that the school set, especially like not giving new assignments on Wednesdays. So that's definitely something I hear from you all. Camille, why don't you go ahead?
So I think similar to Winston, at Capital City, we have something that's called TSI. I'm not even sure what it stands for, but it's supposed to give us a break where we have study hall periods every day. I mean, not every day, on Fridays, and a chance to like have office hours with teachers. But as someone who takes AP and honor classes, we still have class. So I'm not getting a break like other students do. So I feel like I'm at a disadvantage when it comes to my mental clarity. And I also don't have like that Wednesday asynchronous day. So I get really frustrated because it's overwhelming. I just don't feel like I have a chance to do anything else.
Thanks, Camille. Julia?
I think that the Wednesday off in developing the distance learning model was kind of a stroke of genius. Because it's just like, I mean, especially in the middle of the week, the issue with having it on a Friday, as Winston said, is kind of you're working towards the weekend. And it kind of gives, I don't know, a day where you can catch up with your work, and teachers have assigned office hours. Like you can reach out to them and my teachers respond within 10 to 20 minutes saying, yeah, hop on. So I think that that element of the distance learning model was quite it's quite genius. I wish that that would be the case, that that element would be consistent across all schools, charter, public, and otherwise. And I think that, having some schools doing it, I think a broad, I guess, implementational approach would have been the correct thing to do, or is
Okay.
the correct thing to do.
Yeah, thanks, Julio. And I saw JP put in the chat about how teachers will sometimes carry synchronous time over into asynchronous time. So I followed up with a question for any of you guys to answer. You can put it in the chat. What would you like to see education officials focus on improving in terms of distance learning? And what would you just like to see them do if you had a recommendation? But my last question before we move on to the final topic is for any of you all, which was posed to us in the Q&A. What would you all like to have a more active role in the decision-making processes in your school about distance learning? I'm seeing a lot of nods. If one of you guys can be really brief, that would be appreciated. I saw Luke hands first, so Luke, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just typed out. So our school hasn't made too many adjustments, and those that they have mostly been good ones. Although recently, at the turn of the trimester, they adjusted our schedules in a way that many of the students didn't appreciate, myself included. So in that sense, I would really appreciate a place where my students could have a say, because also making our teachers the messengers of our complaints to the administration, while it is probably good for the teachers to hear what our concerns are, and it's also really kind of them to listen to us and pass on our concerns, it's also woefully inefficient use of class time and often makes the teachers the recipients of the students' frustration with the administration. And that frustration should be with the administration, not with the teachers who are trying to do their best, at least in the case of our school. So in that sense, having our say as students and having a direct system where we can actually have say, like maybe a one student representative can talk to our administrative staff every once in a while, that could be really valuable. That's all I really have.
Okay, thanks, Luke. And I see Zion raised his hand to speak. Why don't you go ahead and we'll move to the final topic?
I do think it's really important that teachers and students are like on somewhat the same page, because we're both I think both parties are really not used to the whole like asynchronous and synchronous learning thing with the online learning, and I do think our energy should be more focused towards changing our administrations, like their minds and their decision making, rather than putting it on the teachers. So yeah, I do think having an active role in the decision making in our schools would be really helpful.
Okay, well, thank you guys. Thank you, Zion, for that. Now we are moving on to our final topic, which is communication between students and teachers. So we will hear from JP Roberts, an 11th grade student at Wilson High School, Gary Murray, an 11th grade student at Dunbar High School, and Zion Smithen, an 11th grader at McKinley Tech High School. JP, we will start with you.
All right, good afternoon. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about communication and transparency with teachers or between teachers and students, and what I personally experienced with it. So starting out, I understand that during these times, it is hard to reach teachers by email. They have a lot of emails coming in, not only from higher administration, but from a lot of students. So often teachers do take a while to respond to certain questions or concerns from students, such as myself. I've experienced that. I have a teacher who is not old, but she's older than the other teachers I have. And it takes her a little bit longer to get back because she's not as tech savvy as everyone else. Right. And a simple solution to that I've seen is using things like Remind, where it can send a text notification and it makes response times a lot faster. I know my physics teacher, Mr. H, he uses Remind and he gets back to me, even if it's outside of his office hours, extremely quickly. It doesn't take him any time to get back to me. Another thing regarding transparency is that students need to make an effort to reach out to teachers. I feel like a lot of students who are having troubles getting in contact with them aren't trying as hard as they can be to reaching out. And I know we're saying they have to take it with a grain of salt. It shouldn't be hard for students to reach out in the first place. But given the situation we're in, we have to understand that we're going to have to try a little bit harder to get where we want to be. and obtain certain things. So students need to be taking the initiative to reach out. Students need to be taking the initiative to communicate, and teachers need to be trying their hardest to respond as quickly as possible and in the most efficient way possible. Another thing I wanted to touch up on was, even when there's things outside of school that we have issues with. I know me personally, on a couple of weeks ago, I had to leave my physics class in like the middle because I had something to take care of, and letting my teacher know, as I forgot who it was, they were talking about how sometimes things just happen and you can't get to your teacher quick enough to let them know, and it seems like you're doing something negative even though it's not. We had to find a way to kind of close that gap between an emergency happening and letting our teacher know that it's happening, because that can cause discrepancy and issues with teachers. I've experienced it all the time, because I always have stuff going on with the boards I'm on and the people I'm working with. So transparency and communication is something that is difficult to navigate, but it can be done.
Thank you, JP. And now we're going to hear from Gary, who is also going to talk about the current attendance system, as well as some of the communication systems set up between students and teachers. Gary, go ahead.
All right, thank you. And hello, everyone. My name is Gary Murray, and I go to Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School. And so far, distance learning has been, it's been okay for me. I've been working through it, but when it comes to communication, I have struggled with some teachers. Last year, when it all began in March and even into now. And so communication between me and my teachers are getting better, but even with my own perspective, I decided to reach out to two students, Don A. Miller from Banneker High School and Janira White from H.D. Woodson, and two teachers, Ms. Nubia Garima and Ms. Yarborough from Dunbar High School, to get their input on how communication has been between students and their teachers and teachers and their students. With the students, they had similar answers to most questions. Both students shared that they are struggling during this time of distance learning, but still have the ability to talk to their teachers. Students address a similar problem with communicating to their teachers effectively. Donne and Janira express the transparency as not being there and lacking because, quote, teachers have their own lives. Londyn said it earlier, I put it in the chat. Teachers are parents, teachers are dealing with the pandemic, teachers are going through things that students can't even begin to imagine. I have one teacher that teaches hundreds of students and still have a child and is an only parent. And so it's hard for teachers as well. And now the result of the lack of anything is crucial in any system. And in this new system, the result is that it is negatively affecting students' grades and teachers' ability to teach. Janira White says that, quote, it is causing the students to be more frustrated about grades and school. Communication isn't clearly present for the students, but what about the teachers? Both teachers from Dunbar High School recognize the importance of communication, especially now during this time. Ms. Garima says she is, quote, finding more ways to build relationships with students virtually, and it is easy for students to just disengage. With this, the teachers still express the problems with communication, how it's affecting them, and how they see it's affecting their students' grades. Ms. Yarborough says that she is, quote, open and honest with every student she is able to get in contact with. Now, when I hear in contact with, I'm kind of confused on why she's not able to get in contact with her students. That's because attendance varies with her students, and she still isn't able to get a one-on-one with all of them. This is bad for the teachers. Teachers have to work with students to help them perform better without actually being able to get that time to talk to a particular student. Ms. Garima expresses how students overall, quote, get the shorter end of the stick in this case. With no communication and lack of transparency, students are still held accountable for what they do. Now, I asked both teachers to rate how often they talk to their teachers on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being barely talking to them and 10 being they're talking to them as much as they can. They both gave the same answer, 7. But with this came more talk about how attendance was becoming a contributor to the situation. Ms. Garima says that only 75% attend her live classes. I personally can agree to that claim that attendance is a problem. It's becoming a big problem. It's hard for everyone, especially students, to adapt to learning environment they are in. For Danae, she says that she is struggling because the lack of schooling environment forced her to learn in a comfortable environment. I personally see the effect it has on attendance. In my own classes, I've seen a max of 15 people and as little as 5 in one class. A resolution is needed to fix these issues. We have low communication between teachers and students. We have students that are frustrated with grades and teachers who are frustrated with the system and attendance. To fix this and get through this time effectively together, I believe we first need to take into consideration each side's perspectives. This isn't easy for anyone. Students have to learn with their lives at their feet, and teachers have to teach with the same aspects. Compromise has to be made to help each side. Ms. Garima says, quote, teachers are still figuring it out. Teachers have to adapt through their living. Teachers are forced to be creative, and that takes time. Ms. Yarborough says, quote, both parties need to be open to listen and digest to what is being told, which is something that JP just talked about, that students also need to be willing to reach out to the teacher, need to be willing to work with the teacher, and can't always depend on the teacher to do what they need for them like it is in the school building. The last question that I asked the students and the teachers was how they would change the way communication is. Ms. Garima believes it's time to find a creative way to meet the students in person to better communicate. Some of these teachers haven't met these students. Some of these teachers are getting in incoming students that they haven't even met. They haven't even had a bond with. Danae believed the live classes should become pre-recorded so there's less awkwardness in class and more comfort for teachers and students to communicate. I personally agree with Janir and Ms. Yarborough's similar responses and input on attendance as well. They both believe that teachers should contact every student individually about their grades, attendance, etc. Ms. Yarborough shared with me a system teachers had at the beginning of the pandemic that they don't have right now anymore, where, quote, teachers received assigned students to check up on them and keep track on them. We also agreed on set days for teachers to solely connect with their students to talk, bond, and communicate on how they can further be academically successful, AKA check-ins. Connection leads to communication. As for attendance, it is poor. I've seen it. It is poor. You can see the attendance list. It was poor in the building, but now it's even worse now. Either students are in class and not really focusing, or students aren't in the class. While talking about attendance, Ms. Yarborough suggests a simple camera mandate, which is what we just talked about for students. This would allow the teachers to see their students and receive more participation from them. There are solutions to these problems we face with communication and attendance, and the problems must be resolved to get through this time. We will have to use this system till at least the end of next school year. And for students to be successful and teachers to do their jobs, we have to get things straight. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And now, last but certainly not least, we have Zion Smithen, who will finish us out on this topic and cap off the panelists' testimony tonight.
Hello, my name is Zion Smithen. I'm an 11th grader at McKinley Tech, and I had a couple like main issues when it comes to like our support systems in school. One of the main ones was the lack of downtime for us to process our feelings or talk like about our feelings. And I think one of the big things is if teachers are going to, forcefully take our asynchronous time, which I personally use to decompress, but people may use them for different reasons. But if the teacher are going to take them, they should at least give us maybe a moment to at least check up on us or something like that, because that really isn't their time and they're still taking it. Another one is feeling forced to respond in class, or well, when we've expressed that we are uncomfortable. A lot of teachers want us to have our cameras on, things like that, but maybe not everybody is comfortable, or a lot of people aren't in suitable areas where they can have their camera on. And a lot of the times for like the more rigorous and demanding classes, it's kind of difficult to just be forced to answer a question, because I know for me it takes me a second to really like formulate like an answer. But they want things on the spot, and if we're not answering like quickly, we get antagonized as a class, and then we're made to seem like we're not giving any effort. It's for me, it's been really hard to contact my counselors in a timely manner, because there are big things like National Honor Society, things like that, uh, community service work, and just other things like that. And it's been pretty difficult for me to talk to my counselors to figure out about like my like applications, like my community service, like if there are any more opportunities. Like we have a page on Canvas, but it's not updated regularly, and we can't really contact our like counselor through that page. The lack of patience from teachers and students when it comes to like validating like our frustrations as a whole, because basically like this whole thing, it's given a lot of my teachers really short fuses, and the students I can see short fuses. And when it comes to like de-escalating like situations, like when nobody's talking at all, or everybody's just like, it's just really awkward air, it's just like we either stay like that, or the teacher just moves on, or we just end class. And it's not the best, because most times it'll happen like in the middle of class time, and we won't have time to just recap what we're talking about. And another thing is teachers not expressing how uncomfortable they are with the new online learning stuff. And when we really have like the same issues, and can really make students feel isolated and lonely during this time, because my dad, he's a teacher, like I said earlier. And he's talking to me about how like they want him to do a lot of things, like they expect a lot of metrics and things like that still, and how he gets like not really shunned upon, but like that is something that is always brought up in his like meetings. And they have the same main issues with us. It's like different ways to engage, contact, submitting work and things like that. And yeah, it just feels like it's kind of weird, because me knowing that teachers are like uncomfortable with the whole thing, and really not hearing it from the teachers, it makes me feel like I can't really like express my frustrations to them, because it'll be like talking to a brick wall. Like if someone doesn't like share the same like issues, you won't be getting like that same sympathetic feel that you really wanted. And that's it.
All right, well, thank you, Zion. Now we just have a couple more questions, and then we'll begin to wrap up. The first one, and we'd appreciate short answers. So the first one is, do you feel that it'd be more effective to have like a district or school-wide designated means of communication between teacher and student? So instead of having to jump from like platform to platform, there is just some efficient way that the students can have a role in choosing to get that platform. Giulio, and then Gary, and then we'll move to the next one.
100%. I think that similarly to the day off, I think that a district-wide, district-wide standards for like, online platforms, day off, teachers communicating, video requirement, I think that it's essential. And I think that in this case, I think it would definitely be beneficial for the students.
Gary?
Yes, absolutely. Most definitely. I believe that teachers need as much time to communicate with their students as possible, because this is something that is a problem. Like teachers, they, like somebody said, they have full inboxes. That's the only thing. That's the only way they're communicating. They get on, they get a row of inbox, they get a row of emails. Doesn't matter if it's assignments coming in or assignments being turned in, or students trying to email a teacher. I believe that there should be a platform where we can all communicate with each other. We can send in our questions, and they can send back their answers as soon as possible. Because if we move in this way where we can only communicate over live classes and emails, or even Canvas chats sometimes be responding late. It takes teachers to respond late. If we can find something effective to take that place, that there's a difference between live classes and between communicating. student, but having that student and teacher relationship. I believe we can find a platform where that student teacher relationship can happen, that students can be more successful.
Thank you, Gary. Shayla, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, so I know this was touched on a little bit within our panelists' testimony, but I kind of wanted to just open up the question to everybody. My question is, distance learning has created a new dynamic between teacher and student, not allowing us to create actual connections with our teachers. How do you feel this has affected the communication between teachers and students? And anyone can answer this. Go ahead, Zion.
I think it's either like halted it and hindered it, like really largely, because like one teacher can be responsible for like 50 plus students because they have multiple blocks and things like that, and they also have to like somehow respond in a timely manner to 100 plus messages, and also they have to be in meetings and things like that. So it's just like you realize like how much teachers like also have to go through along with us students, and finding that like balance between being able to talk to a teacher and then a teacher actually being able to like respond back to us has been really difficult. And I think either it's if you weren't already comfortable with the teacher, then that like making of a relationship is like non-existent at this point, because like you don't really get like a vibe from a teacher like off of what's it called, like email and things like that, and off of like remind messages. And in class they're really objective. Like there's not much downtime to like really malleable time, I guess, to where it's free, it's like free flowing and everything, unless you have one of those types of teachers. But I do think that making relationships and important things like recommendation letters and things like that, like I do think those are been like a big things that you either have to rely on old relationships, or you're gonna have to put in like a lot of work to really cultivate those, because it's difficult.
Thank you. And Winston, if you want to go ahead, you can.
I was just gonna say that we have to ask like the bigger question: is school for learning or just getting work done? And if it's for learning, then there definitely needs to be a strong communication between the students and the teachers. But if administrations believe that the school really needs to just be for students turning in work and getting a grade and not learning, then maybe they don't put as much emphasis and thought behind communication. But I think that if school is supposed to be an environment of learning where students learn and carry what they learn to help them in higher education or whatever other area of their life, then there definitely needs to be strong communication between students and teachers.
Thanks, Winston. And now for anyone who's still watching, you can put a question in the Q&A box. We are running short on time, so we do want to respect everyone's wishes so we can get out of here. So try to put those questions in, but if not, we'll wrap it up after this final question, which is for all of you. And this is about attendance. Someone wrote, attendance is crucial when it comes to learning. Some students don't come to class because they don't want to, while others can't come because they have technology issues. Do you believe that the attendance criteria needs to be more solid? Gary, and then Reagan.
I can understand where I've had friends who are saying that their attendance has been all over the place. We're being told, at first we were being told that we log into Canvas and that's just how our attendance is taken. And I had 5 missed days pop up on my report card, and I was kind of confused, and they said, oh, well, you didn't log in. Now, I know that I logged in because that's the only way that I can talk to my teachers. And so I believe that there is there's not enough efficiency there. And then we started learning that we were supposed to be logging in through Clever. And so now there's miscommunication between teachers, administrators, and attendance people. And now they're having to fix that in the middle of us still having to go to school. So I believe there needs to be a more solid basis on where we need to take attendance. My teachers, they are now taking attendance on their own. I have two teachers who just take attendance periodically while in class. And that, I don't know if that's something that they're asked to do or if that's something they're just doing to make sure because of the technicalities that they had previously. But I believe that we need solidly a better system of attendance, especially right now.
Thank you. And then Reagan and Londyn, if you guys can make it very brief.
That's good. So I think that in order to distinguish not being on camera because you can't versus not because you don't want to, I think that a good way to kind of verify that is to take a look at, ensure that they are getting their work done on time, because usually not wanting to stems from not wanting to go to that class. There needs to be a sense of making sure the person is still on track.
Okay, and Londyn?
My statement is to pretty much piggyback off of what Gary is saying, but in my opinion, I think this whole attendance thing right now is unreliable because there's been a few instances where I had to miss class for, let's say, a doctor's appointment or orthodontist appointment. The teacher wouldn't even know I was not in class and would still mark me as absent. So honestly, at this time, I don't even know how attendance is being taken because there's never a point in time in the class where the teacher will stop and say, "Okay, we're going to take attendance," or I'll read off the list of attendees from, let's say, Microsoft Teams because they give you a list of who joined the call. Oftentimes there are people that pop in and out of the call just to say that they logged into class and not stay, and they still can get marked absent, but then try to say that they weren't in class or that they missed class. So at the moment, I don't really know how they can count on the absences or tardies or who's actually in class or why they're in class and why they're not, because one, communication is so all over the place in so many different reasons. And I just think that sometimes there are people who don't come to the class, but their video recordings of the class so they can watch that and complete the work. I just think there's so many different issues and we just have to find one way to figure out how to take attendance and make sure that everyone is counted for, or if the teacher realizes the student hasn't been in class for a certain amount of days, when is it going to be the limit to the point where they reach out to see if everything is okay? Because I've been in another situation where I messaged my teacher maybe that Monday morning telling her that I wouldn't be in class, and she wouldn't respond until the Tuesday, and then she would go to say her remind notifications aren't on, so she wouldn't see the message. So I just think it's all over the place, just like how JP was saying, when there's an emergency and you're in class and you have to find a way to get out of class. We're not trying to interrupt the class, but you have to tell the teacher. It's just so many things fall in line, such as communication, and that can affect the attendance as well.
Thank you, Londyn. And the last question, anyone can answer. If you could change one thing about your classes and the way distance learning is going, what would it be? We'll go Alyssa, Giulio, Luke. I see JP said the length, either that or the activities we engage in, they tend to be boring. So we'll go Alyssa, Giulio, and then Luke. And if anyone else wants to go, raise your hand. Alyssa, go ahead.
So overall, what I think that can make classes better, or what I think needs to be changed. Oh, I hope I didn't freeze. Okay, what I think. Oh, okay, I'm back. Okay, so what I think should be changed is the amount of assignments that we're getting. So I think that definitely the assignment should be set. I know, like last year it was like a thing where DCPS was like, you have 2 assignments a week, or it was like 2 or 3 assignments a week. And while a lot of my teachers didn't follow that, those who did, it made it easier for us, because I think that a lot of these problems stem from workload. Like the whole asynchronous synchronous thing is coming from the fact that we don't have enough time to do our work. And what I don't think people are taking into account is, usually when we're in school and we're in class, we're doing work and we're learning at the same time. When we're on Zoom, we're either learning or we're doing the synchronous time and then we're doing work. It's not, you're not able to do it at the same time. And because of that, we have to find the time somewhere else. We have to find the time after school. All of that is stemming from the amount of assignments. Like all of these issues are coming from assignments. So if we lessen the assignments, then hopefully that'll help solve some of the other problems. So I think a set amount of assignments for every class and making sure that teachers actually listen to it and not do their own thing because they can or because people are not actually like making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. That's something that needs to be implemented.
Okay, thank you, Alyssa. Giulio, if you're still there, you can go next.
Hello?
You're good.
Yeah, sorry about that. If I could change one thing, I would definitely have to agree with Alyssa, which is I guess a workload in general. And I think that, I mean, it's important that when student requests are, I guess, given, that, you know, they're abided by and that there's full transparency on, I guess, on par with the admin. But in general, I think everything's been going fine. But if that thing, I would just strengthen it just a little bit.
Thanks, Giulio. Luke.
So I don't go to a DCPS school, so we do not have the like basically asynchronous Wednesday. We have something similar to it in that we on Wednesdays generally will have like 2 or 3 live sessions, but it's still a substantial amount. What I would want instead of that is maybe to have one like possibly like a Monday every 2 weeks where it's just dedicated to turning in late assignments. I think I would find that really valuable. I don't think we, as a school, I don't think we necessarily need to have every Wednesday be asynchronous, especially because in our classes, asynchronous classes still have work. So having one day where there just isn't a new assignment assigned could be pretty valuable. Yeah.
Thanks, Luke. And I see Zion said to adjust the workload, more transparency between teachers and students, easier communication between teachers and students. Gary, you can go, then if anyone else wants to go after him.
Okay, I'm gonna be really brief. There's 3 things that I feel like need to be fixed. The communication is a big one. No student is going to be successful without communication. 2, the second thing is the workload. I have a teacher. She just announced the other day that if she can just get her students to participate more, if she can just get her students to be able to participate and maybe have their camera on, she will reduce it to 2 assignments a week. Now, I don't know if DCPS was supposed to be at 2 assignments a week, but I know that I haven't been at 2 assignments a week. So I feel as though that, you know, if we could do that, that would be well. And maybe if DCPS can put us on a platform like Telegram where they can use our emails to set up accounts so that it would be easier for us to reach out to our teachers and to fix that attendance, make sure that students are still going to school, because that's beneficial for not just the students, but for the teachers as well.
Thank you, Gary. Londyn.
This is just a really small comment. Because of what Gary just said about the fact of making sure students are going to school. When we were in school, they made sure that if your child missed 10 days of school, they were coming to your house to figure out what was going on. They were calling your house, like all types of things. If you missed 30 days, you automatically failed however many classes you missed 30 days of schooling. And I feel as though we were well past 30 days of school. I know people who's been out of school for over 10 days and there's still nothing going on. And I just feel as though once all this virtual happened, they fell back. And I'm not going to say it's people necessarily from like Wilson or maybe not even Dunbar, but you have to think about the students that go to schools like Ballou and Acacia, like on the other side of the river where things may not be the best. And I know personally because I live across the street from Ballou, so I live in the neighborhood with a lot of students that attend the school and I can talk to them about the things. It's just not the same point of view that I would get from going to Wilson. Like at Wilson, they had a large number of computers so that any student that needed one, they could get one. But then you go to a school like Blue and there's a challenge or there's a shortage of supplies that they may need. And personally, I know that Blue is a very like amazing school. And some of the stuff they have that Wilson may not even have, but just because of the neighborhood that they're in, they think that they can just slack off with the school and not really worry about it as much. And I feel as though it's not fair. Like every student deserves the same opportunity, regardless of where you live, what school you go to. Like it's just not fair. And I think that attendance may be one of those things because the student feel like when we were in school, you checked. So I came to school, but now that they realize, oh, they're not checking to see if we're in school, so I'm just not going to go to school, that puts them on the track to fail, to not be successful, to not get the information that they need. And I think that that is something that they really need to focus on because, yes, I get participation is low, but you have to also check on the child's mental, check on if they're physically okay. Like, it's just a lot that they fell back from when school closed.
Thank you, Londyn, and thank you all. Thank you all so much for coming. A big shout out to all the panelists. You guys can give each other a round of applause. You all did fantastic. Thank you all for staying so late. This was about an hour and 45 minutes or so. Thank you so much to John Paul, the executive director, Caitlin, Lyle, and all the state board staff that helped us create and promote this event to various groups and on social media as well. We did get pretty good turnout. If you are a student and you're interested in joining the Student Advisory Committee, please email our executive director, John Paul, who hopefully can put his email in the chat or someone can. We meet virtually on the second Mondays each month. So we will be having a meeting in 2 weeks, I guess, because next week will be the first Monday. So there's John Paul's email. Please reach out. And once again, thank you all for coming. Now Shayla will just wrap up.
Additionally, we'd like to thank our panelists for offering their voices as students. It is of paramount importance that all perspectives are heard in this time of isolation to maintain a coherent and successful education system. And your input and the dedication to the premise of education aids in making that happen efficiently, being that we are the individuals who experience the system on a day-to-day basis. Also, thank you to all of those who have joined us to listen.
So thank you all for coming. Good night and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday evening. All right, have a good one.